All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, it's becoming more and more apparent to me that Draymond Green and the Golden State Warriors have resigned themselves to the fact that it is a very high probability that Kevin Durant is going to leave their team after this season. So now they're starting to look for replacements for him, and within their mind, they're starting to understand some of the possible advantages of him leaving the team. Draymond knows that if Kevin Durant stays, there's no way in the world that he's going to make as much money as he can possibly himself make. Draymond Green, I'm talking about, from the Golden State Warriors through an extension or a re-up. So I think that he's starting to look for some of the quote-unquote bright side aspects of Kevin Durant possibly leaving the team. And he's come out and made a rather, I would say, unwise declaration about Kevin Durant's future. That being that he does not care whether Kevin Durant comes back or not. Basically, he said if he stays, he stays. If he goes, he goes. And I think that once again, Draymond is just trying to keep the peace so that he does not get the blame if the Warriors do not win the championship this season. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right. We all know the Warriors are focused on winning their fourth chip, but free agency certainly hanging over their heads. Draymond Green addressed this topic with the Athletic, specifically when it came to Kevin Durant's future with that squad, saying this: whatever happens this summer happens. Whatever the hell he do, he does. If he go, he go. If he stay, he stay. But while he's here, we're going to win another championship. It's just that simple. Nothing else matters.
Now, if Draymond were truly shrewd and prudent, he would have said, you know what, I'm not interested in speaking about another man's financial situation or his contractual situation. We're just focused on the championship this season. But he's so clunky, and he has such a difficult time controlling the emanations of his emotions that he just says things that he shouldn't say.
Max?
Yep.
You think this is the end of the Warriors dynasty?
If they lose Kevin Durant, no doubt. Because
I disagree. I think that the Warriors can re-up. There are other players that they can acquire who, of course, will not replace Kevin Durant, but who can assume a role that would be better than what Harrison Barnes brought to the table, but of course not quite as good as KD. I've already brought up the name of Tobias Harris. I think that he would fit in with them very well. And the Warriors have shown many times this season that when Kevin Durant does not play, they really don't miss a beat. Where Kevin Durant really comes into play is in the postseason. And he always was a key combatant of LeBron James. Kevin Durant's real role on the Golden State Warriors for the last 2 years plus, going into almost 3 years now, has always been to offset LeBron James. The thought process basically is if KD can average 33 a game while LeBron averages 33 or 34 a game, we're good, because the rest of our team will out-execute, out-think, and outplay the rest of LeBron's team. Now that LeBron is in LA and that team might not ever be good, is it truly as essential for the Warriors to maintain KD as maybe they may have thought it was? Maybe they have rethought their understanding of what they need on their squad, and they've also, as I've stated, resigned themselves to the fact that KD's probably going to leave. There are adequate replacements for KD that might fit into their system even a little bit better than KD from a team perspective. Now, every once in a while, you do love to have a player like a Kevin Durant who you could just give the ball to and say score, and he can go get you 35, 45 points. But what you'll find is that in many of KD's scoring outbursts, either they lose or they barely win. Now, Steph Curry is the player that when he explodes, they win, and they normally win big when Steph Curry explodes.
dynasty is not about simply competing, sometimes making a finals, getting to a conference finals. The dynasty started 4 finals ago when they won the finals. Now, they did it against a depleted Cavs team. Nevertheless, they won. The following season, they set the all-time record for wins in the regular season with 73. And Stephen A., the fact that they lost was a monstrous upset. It was huge. Then they get KD and unleash a reign of terror on the league the following season, where no one ever challenged them through the playoffs and everything. And then last year, they were strongly challenged by a Rockets team, which plays the game analytically, like we are going to be the most efficient offensive team of all time. And still the Warriors managed to overcome the Rockets. You know how I feel about that with Chris Paul's injury, and you've brought up the fact that Iguodala was hurt. Nevertheless, that's 3 championships in 4 years, and the only time they lost was a monster upset that cemented LeBron James's legacy.
That was not a monster upset. As I've stated previously, the Cleveland Cavaliers were the better team. The real question is, why were they always underperforming so much in the regular season? That's the real question. There's a big difference between fact and narrative. Even Michael Jordan stated after the Cavaliers came back from down 3-1 that they were the better team. If you were to compare the roster of the 2016 Warriors to the roster of the 2016 Cavaliers, you would have asked yourself, why is it that the Warriors are the team that won 73 games and not the Cleveland Cavaliers? Why was the series so competitive in the first place? The Cavaliers should have beaten that Warriors team 4-1, and that Warriors team really just maximized, they optimized every aspect of their team. There are certain notions that, or sentiments that maybe they maxed out too much in the regular season and they had nothing left in the postseason. Either way, that was not an upset.
By the way, against a super team out of the East. So that is the dynasty we're talking about. You're winning the championship every year unless there's a monster upset. That's 4 straight years. They lose KD. They won't be the best team in basketball next year. They'll still have the nucleus of a great team. They still may win another championship with this team. But they ain't the reigning and defending every year, why even play the season team anymore.
Right, so then you're not really answering the question. The question is, will they still be a dynasty? The question is not, will they still be considered a super duper team, as you would call it? Now, I would agree with you that they would no longer be considered a super duper team if KD left. But whether or not they'll still be a dynasty, that won't really be ascertained until next season, by the end of the season. I actually think that the Warriors would be a better regular season team next year with KD gone.
That's not going to be them. And if you think it's so easy to replace Kevin Durant, you're paying Draymond, you're paying Steph, you're going to pay Clay, right? Who are you going to get to replace Draymond, to replace KD? What are the...
Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris is nowhere near the overall player of a Kevin Durant. But if you can bring him in and he can give you, say, 24 and 4 and shoot around 49-50% from the field, somewhere in the high 30s from 3, he'd be more than good enough.
Assets that you're going to use to bring in another superstar. You don't have the money because there's a salary cap. What are you going to do? That's
the Warriors are not worried about salary caps.
End of the Warriors as we now know them. Yes, the Splash Brothers will be there, Draymond maybe, and all that stuff. They'll be a great team, but they ain't the reign of terror is over if KD leaves. It's over.
Well, 2 points. Number one, you're wrong. And number two, your argument makes absolutely positively no sense whatsoever.
Agreed. Even Kellerman had to laugh at that.
And the biggest reason for that would be, the biggest reason for that would be your very own words that you've been articulating all season long, dating back to last season. Last season, there wasn't any, why even play the season? They're going to win the championship.
Thank you, sir. Once again, Kellerman is arguing something different. He's not arguing whether or not this is going to be the end of the Warriors dynasty. He's arguing whether or not they're going to be considered unbeatable, or as he calls it, a super duper team.
Houston. This year, it ain't been why even play the season, because you've been talking about how Houston is a viable threat yet again. So
he's even been talking about how the Denver Nuggets, if the Nuggets have home court, might be able to take the Warriors to 7 games. So a lot of these people, they're confused over what they consider the Warriors to be.
Really, the situation that you're saying that they're going to lose, you eradicated from them more than a year ago. That's why your argument makes no sense. Now to get to my point, in terms of why you're wrong. But that's not the point. I said your words. I didn't say what happened. I said your words, your argument. Now, to get to the point, just because you lose KD doesn't mean it's over.
Thank you, sir.
Who are you going to get? You think they just going to lose KD and get nothing to replace him? I don't see that being the case. Now we have to wait and see. And that's the approach that I would take. What I mean by that is, if you get KD, get absolutely nothing in return, and come back without anybody. Let's take the example, it's the reverse. Instead of getting KD and losing Harrison Barnes, you lose a KD and get back a Harrison Barnes. Not to disrespect Harrison Barnes, because I like him, and I actually think he's doing a decent job in Sacramento. The point that I'm trying to make.
Right, but Harrison Barnes, that would be like your last option, to go back to Harrison Barnes. But that would be interesting if they were to reacquire him, because then that would bring an element of a redeemed team, quote unquote redeemed team type of atmosphere to their squad for next season. As in, let's go win the championship that we should have won back in 2016.
Is that when you look at the Golden State Warriors, to have the best shooting backcourt, to have the rules that basically just pave the way for you because you can get called for a foul for having bad breath, for crying out loud. You're in a situation with the Golden State Warriors where, with or without KD, you're going to be a contender. If you keep them, even better. If you lose them, what if you get somebody else? Whether it's a Kawhi Leonard, whether it's Anthony Davis in a trade.
I don't see them getting Kawhi, but that would be very interesting if they were able to acquire Kawhi. That'd be very interesting. He might fit in with their team even better than KD.
Just never know. So I'm looking at it from that perspective, and I'm saying no. It's not a foregone conclusion that the dynasty ends, because to me the dynasty is qualified by whether or not they win, not how rough the road was to winning.
All right, your argument doesn't work for two reasons. One, you're wrong, and two, what you said makes no sense. See how that works? It's kind of the same thing. First, I'm going to defend my point of view. Yes, it is curious about the Warriors. I agree, Stephen A. On the one hand, I'm saying no one else has a chance. On the other hand, I picked the Rockets last year. I say they have a puncher's chance this year. Harden has to hit big shots and all of that.
In other words, Stephen A. called you out for your silly shit and your excessive use of hyperbole. I mean, you just, it's so ridiculous. This guy calls everything the greatest by far, light years ahead of everything, and then comes back and says, I'm picking the Rockets to beat the Warriors. I mean, come on, which one is it?
The curious thing about the Warriors is, for such a great all-time team, they are curiously vulnerable. They went 6 games with against the LeBron team for that first championship that didn't have Kyrie or Kevin Love.
Maybe it's because the Golden State Warriors are not as talented as you try to act like they are, Max Kellerman. They're just a great amalgamation. They're very potent in their totality. But player for player, or player by player, they're not that talented, they're not that gifted, and they have a lot of specialists on their team. Steph Curry's probably the most talented specialist in the history of the NBA, but he's not a dominant athlete. What the history of the NBA Finals, especially in the latter portion of those series, always show you is that the cream rises to the top, and that a player either has to be a transcendent athlete or he has to have some type of excessive advantage that you never see, like a 6'9" point guard in Magic Johnson, or a 6'10" small forward in Larry Bird, who's the best shooter in the league and arguably the second best passer in the league after Magic Johnson, or Shaquille O'Neal, who's the most physically dominant player in the entire NBA. As the NBA Finals go along, you need those type of transcendent performers, and the 2015 Warriors didn't have that. They were very fortunate that Kyrie and Kevin Love were not there. In 2016, they were a better team, but they had a series of issues befall them sequentially that hamstrung their squad. But no, they're not a super team. They were never a super team. So I don't view them as being excessively vulnerable for them being an all-time great team. Most all-time great teams are vulnerable, either in the conference final round or in the finals.
Lost the following year. Then they added KD. No one challenged them. But then the very next year, I thought they should have lost had Chris Paul played to the Rockets. Okay, so in the end, though, they won 3 out of 4, and the one they lost was a monster upset. That is an all-time.
Was not a monster upset. The Cleveland Cavaliers were favored to win the NBA Finals coming into both the 2014-2015 season and the 2015-2016 season. The Cavaliers were the favorite team to win the championship both those years.
Dynasty. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. I'm saying that's over if they lose KD. Now, to your argument, you're saying they'll replace him with someone. With what exactly? What are they going to use to replace KD? They're capped out.
It's so funny. These people, they say the Warriors didn't need KD. They were already a championship level team without KD. Now it's, what are they going to do when KD leaves? The dynasty is going to be over. They're going to be they're barely going to be one of the average teams or slightly above average team in the league, or maybe a borderline great team. It's very good, but they won't be the favorite. Which one is it? Did the Warriors need KD, or did they not need KD to win championships? He's very confused. That's why Stephen A. Smith said what he said.
He signs elsewhere. It doesn't open up a salary cap spot because they're capped out because they're going to have to pay Clay, and then they're paying Steph, and they have Draymond. You think you're going to use Draymond Green in a trade to get an elite player right now? That's not going to happen. I don't see how do they get Kawhi? They're going to sign him? What, sign and trade? Who are they going to trade from? They don't have the guy on the roster. If they trade that guy, then they don't have that guy anymore. Klay Thompson in a sign and trade exactly for Kawhi Leonard, does that get it done? But then they don't have Klay. The dynasty is over as we know it if KD walks. Now I'll say this. Iguodala was the elite or next thing to it two-way wing that they need. That team needs it. They have Steph and Klay, the Splash Brothers, no doubt. They have the do-everything guy for the pick and roll with Draymond Green, although KD has sort of replaced that. I'm sure they'd rather lose Draymond than KD at this point, right? They're probably working on it. But
they're definitely working on it. That's why Draymond went and signed with Rich Paul.
KD sort of replaced that. If they lose KD, they need to have another elite two-way wing there in order to make this work. Remember, 6 games against LeBron without Kyrie or KD, or Kevin Love, and then they lost to LeBron and those guys. They need, but what KD is, it could be Paul George, it could be Kawhi Leonard, it could be someone like that, but they need an elite two-way wing other than Klay, who's one of the 2 Splash Brothers. We've seen them vulnerable without it. There's no way for them to get it. It's over.
They won a championship before Kevin Durant arrived. They went to 2 consecutive NBA Finals before KD arrived. DeMarcus Cousins is there. We all know he's back this year, but he's...
Right, but for all intents and purposes, the Warriors have basically stated that they're not going to re-sign DeMarcus. So this pretty much is going to be his only season with the Warriors. At least that's according to Steve Kerr.
Not the same player that he is going to be, because it takes you a lengthy period of time to fully recover from that Achilles injury that he had. And it's always easy to find role players, particularly when you're in a championship situation with elite shooters the way that they have, with the deep pockets that they're going to have available to them, particularly when you're moving into that new arena. Are you going to get specifically the quality of a superstar like Kevin Durant? Chances are no. But do you have enough in place to win? Yes. And last time I checked, Max Kellerman sat up there and said religiously, again, I'm only going by your argument for the moment. Max Kellerman is the one that is religiously alluded to not necessarily needing the 3rd superstar or that penultimate.
Thank you, sir. This guy's all over the place.
Star on your squad. You can get really good players that ain't necessarily superstars and join them with superstars like a Steph Curry and get it done. These are your words. So if it's your words,
right,
then that argument doesn't fly when you turn around and say, excuse me, why even play the season? That no longer exists. It hasn't
Thank you, sir.
existed for the last 2 years, according to you.
I agree that even if they lose KD, this group, this core, can eventually win, say, 1 more championship.
So then how can you say that the dynasty's over then? You said the dynasty's over. Stop saying that. Say their time period as an unconquerable NBA team is over, at least in your mind, because according to you, they were unconquerable with KD, even though you picked them to lose last season. So your argument flops all over the place.
Not a dynasty. And in fact, I would say that if they lose KD, they will not win the championship next year.
That's
the end of this dynasty.
They've been
It makes perfect sense.
Hold on. They've been a 4 straight NBA Finals.
Right.
When you say, they could win, when you say they could win 1 more, that would be 5.
No, but not next
You
year.
act like the 1 is separated from the 4. They've already been the 4 straight, and they won.
By the way, I'm not taking them to win another
Well, what if
championship.
they win next year, Molly?
I'm saying
No, that's what he's arguing. I'm not saying I agree with it.
It depends how you define the dynasty, but I'm saying the Splash Brothers, it is not inconceivable that they can win another
Stephen A. Smith, you finally figured that shit out? I've been saying that for the whole segment, that this dude is changing the definition of what a dynasty is to fit his own bullshit argument.
championship in their years together at some point if they stay together. But this iteration of the Warriors, that's over. They won't win it next year if KD leaves. That's what I'm saying.
All right.
Okay, well, that point is clear. Thank you. I understand that point. I don't agree with you, but I understand that point.
All right.
Kellerman's trying to make the same lack of intellect argument. Whenever he loses or he's losing, he claims it's because people are not intelligent enough to understand what he's saying. When in all reality, he's the one who's trying to obfuscate the meaning of words so that he can concoct a fallacious argument or a fallacious attempt at a point. And it's just not linking up. It's not making sense. First, he says that the Warriors did not need Kevin Durant to be a championship level team. Now he's saying that when Kevin Durant leaves, they're not going to win a championship anymore. They're no longer going to be a dynasty. Then he says that when they had Kevin Durant, they became unconquerable, even though he picked them to lose last season against the Rockets. So he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Either way, we'll see what happens after this season. I do believe that Draymond Green is kind of sort of hoping that Kevin Durant leaves now, because now he can get his money. So peace.